Good morning, everyone. We will begin shortly. We just want to give more people an opportunity to join us. So stay with us. Thank you, Becky. We will begin shortly. We just want to give folks a couple of minutes to join us. Thank you for being with us. Becky, it would be nice to have some music playing right now, huh?
I was thinking the same thing.
Yes.
Maybe you could sing, Tammy?
You know that it's so I can sing. um, this the song, I don't know why it just popped into my head as I was speaking it, but you remember that song, Never Give Up on a Good Thing.
Yes.
Remember what makes you happy. That's what came into my head.
Love it.
But I can say, since we are waiting for our folks to join us, that this is homecoming, you guys. Homecoming at home. So hopefully everyone is prepared and joining us for all the wonderful events we'll have going on this week. All right, so we are going to get started. I am just so happy to be here and honored to be here on today. My name is Tammy T. Blevins, and I want to say good morning and welcome. I am Tammy T. Blevins, and I am the Associate Director for Faculty and Staff Giving here on campus. Hopefully you all have heard from me and heard about that program. I've been here for 15 years and we've been doing faculty and staff giving for about 4 years now. I also have the honor and the privilege of serving as the chair of the Black Staff Association. And I also serve on the board, the executive board for the Staff Association. On behalf of the Staff Association and Human Resources, we'd like to welcome you to Cabinet Conversations. Today's Cabinet Conversations is a series of conversations with cabinet members, and it's designed to help us to get to know our campus leaders on a more personal level. And we want to hear what they have to say about the important topics that are impacting our campus. This is a new event series. It's launched, I believe, in July, and it was a result of the Staff at Work survey, the CUCSA engagement survey, and the Idea Waves that was part of the Staff Association's strategic plan. And today, we are chatting with Becky Petitt, Vice Chancellor for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. Before we actually begin the program, though, I have a few housekeeping items. So, number one, we have taken precautions against Zoom bombing. But if something were to happen today, we would immediately close down this session, and then we would just basically find another opportunity to continue our dialogue with VC Petitt. We have collected questions in advance, and we will get to as many of our questions as possible. And lastly, we will, any questions that we do not get to, we will try to answer them at a later date and get those questions answered for you. With that, I'm actually gonna just say, let's get started. So, VC Becky Petitt, you have recently completed 5 years with UC San Diego. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And I'd like to ask you for, as one of the questions that came in, what are your favorite moments during your time here?
Great question to start with. Favorite moments. But before I respond to that, let me say thank you to the Staff Association for your leadership. I think it's fantastic that you are responding to what our campus constituents have asked for in creating this opportunity for us to have these conversations. And then I also want to say thank you to you, Tammy, for your leadership with the Black Staff Association. So wanted to begin with gratitude and then continue with gratitude, talking about what was your first question about what are some of my favorite moments. So I really think I have a fantastic group of colleagues to work with. I have never worked with people who care so much about the people they work with, the work they are charged to do, and approach it with such sincerity. And then having had the opportunity to see how much care and thoughtfulness people put into moving to the remote environment made me really, really appreciate the leadership team that I have the privilege to work with, as well as my team members. So it makes such a huge difference when you have great colleagues, right? So appreciating the leadership team and my own leadership team. I started my career also as in student affairs. So I really cherish the time I have with our students. And I'm reflecting on a time that Vice Chancellor Satterland, I was working late one night and she was like, hey, I'm going to hang out with some students and we're going to have pizza and just play games. And I was like, for real? I could stop working and just go hang out and play games. And so that was one of the most fun things I had the opportunity to do, just hang out, chill, not have to talk about, business or anything, but just be with our scholars and get to know them and allow them to get to know me. I'm not done with fun yet. The Triton 5K has been among the most fun things I've had a chance to do with my own team. So for those of you who don't know, that's an opportunity to raise funds, scholarship dollars for our scholars, for our students. So what I would do every year is tell my team members, whoever wants to participate in this, I'll pay your entry fee. So we always had lots of takers, and we wore these yellow capes. For those of you who will remember, on the back it said Team EDI.
I
So
remember.
yeah, and some of my team members they really wanted to just come hang out and wear the red capes, and they met us at the end, playing games and stuff. I know some of them didn't really do the walk, but that's okay. So that was fun. And then the last thing, it's one of the more recent, was when we were at the Chancellor's house, at Geisel House, having a welcome event for Dr. Helen Griffith, our inaugural director at the Preuss School. And somebody suggested, it might have been me, that somebody put the wobble on. And so we it wasn't really spontaneous, I kind of planned it, broke out into the wobble. We cleared some space in Geisel House, and lots of us got out there dancing. And so Geisel House will never quite be the same.
Oh my gosh.
We brought
I love it.
some Black joy to that space. So thank you for starting with that question about what has brought me joy and what has been really enjoyable.
Absolutely. I think, one of the most important things that we can do and continue to do is build community, and just kind of letting go and having fun with one another is definitely one of the best ways to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and bring another question to you. You have a BS in psychology and a doctorate in education. So we would like for you to tell us more about your professional journey and how you got started in equity, diversity, and inclusion. What advice can you provide for staff who want to become leaders in EDI, in that field? And in the field, is there any specific training or experience that's needed?
Okay, wow, that was like 3 questions.
I know, right? But don't worry, I can go back.
But let me start with my preparation for this role. So many of you have heard that my mom was an activist herself. I have a brother who is deaf. And so I grew up learning sign language and watching my mom advocate for my brother. And sometimes her advocacy was absolutely fierce. So I have an incredible role model in my mom, and really grew up with an eye toward who is not at the table, who is excluded, and how can we create opportunities for inclusion. And so my baccalaureate is in psychology, my master's and PhD are both in higher education administration. So that's really understanding people, really knowing higher education, understanding systems. And then in my faculty role, I used to teach organizational theory and organizational change. So you combine all of those things, understanding people, understanding systems, understanding how to promote change, and then you have someone like me. And as I told the Chancellor when he was interviewing me, is that you don't hire someone like me, like a Vice Chancellor for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, and expect the status quo. We are hired to foster and to facilitate change, right? So we are change agents. And the advice I have for people is, if you're interested in this, is to make sure that it's work that you really love. Make sure that it is work that feeds your soul in a way that is life-giving for you. And I am going to be a little vulnerable here and tell you all that I started this work from a place of anger and rage, right? Being angry about the exclusion, being enraged about the way Black people, queer people, people with disabilities, and all of the minoritized communities just being really angry about the systems and structures in place that are so stubborn and so hard to move. But I realized very soon that you can't stay in a place of rage, right? And so I evolved very quickly to doing this work from a place of love, right? Thinking about what is it that I love, what is it that I want to build, what is the world that I want to inhabit, and what is the world that I want for my child, for future generations, right? So really doing this because it makes the world a better place and because I'm a better person for it, right? So doing it is anyone who wants to do this, doing it from a place of love, and because it will feed your soul. You will have resistance, and it goes without saying that you have to be brave to do this work. You have to absolutely be brave because sometimes it is not safe, right? You are pushing against systems and structures and voices and people who continue to remind you the way things are supposed to be, right? And they are supposed to be, in their minds, folks will reinforce the power structure and fight against change at every turn. But back to what is necessary, knowing your milieu. Mine is, I'm working in higher education, so it's important for me to know higher ed. But if you want to do this work in athletics, if you want to do this work in human resources, if you want to do this work in industry, you have to know the domain, know the milieu, and then understand the systems and structures in place, and think about where are levers for change, and find some allies, because you absolutely don't want to be doing this work alone. And in fact, if you really want to transform an organization, you can't do it alone. Did I answer all three parts of that question?
Well, the third part is there any specific training or experience needed for EDI?
Specific training or experience, knowing your domain. Also, for me, what is important is understanding how to use data to transform an organization. Stories and narratives are incredibly important, and they need to be paired with data, right? So I often say you can't solve a problem you can't see. So one of the first things I did in this role was to make the data visible on our website. So you can see presence, you can see attrition, you can see who is succeeding, and so forth, right? So understanding data, it's critically important that you understand the history of exclusion, right? And also understanding the history of inclusion. And there's so many scholars and practitioners who have come before us. So you often don't have to start de novo. You don't have to start from scratch, consulting with colleagues, looking to strategies that have worked. And I also think it's important to know, and it won't surprise you as someone who taught this, that it's important to ground your work in a theory of change, right? So understanding the literature, understanding the history, being able to talk comprehensively and capaciously about the work that you're pursuing.
Awesome. And I think because I think it's Cornell University that is right now, they're advertising certificate programs in EDI and that sort of thing. Is that something that's fairly new?
It's not. There are a number of programs out there, and I'm not familiar with Cornell's program, but I will advertise my own. I don't toot my horn very often, but
Toot, toot.
I am
This is
on.
about you.
So I was on the board. I just rolled off of the NCORT, National Conference on Race and Ethnicity, and every year I have invited a few of my other colleagues to join me in doing an institute for those who want to be chief diversity officers. So on a national platform, we it's a 2-day institute about how to become a chief diversity officer. And we walk individuals through the various components of that.
Awesome. That's pretty cool. So in 2019, your office launched the campus's first ever strategic plan for inclusive excellence. Will you please share more about the plan and how it ties into eliminating racism and creates opportunities for a more pro-Black environment?
Sure, sure. It is important that I give a shout out to my team members who helped do a lot of the heavy lifting to get us to the point of being able to execute the plan. Assistant Vice Chancellor Diane Forbes-Berthoud led this initiative alongside me. And we spent a lot of time socializing this idea, helping people to understand why it was important to have a strategy, why it was important to have a strategic plan, grounding it in UC San Diego's mission, right? Grounding it in our existing strategic plan, and then working with the campus community to identify how do we bring this mission to life? How do we actually live it, right? How do we create strategy around that? And we had, I can't even remember the number, thousands of conversations with various constituent groups to gather their ideas about what the plan should include. We also looked at a number of demands that we had gotten from various constituent groups, right? And how do we build into our strategy what our campus community members have said we need, right? So that culminated a couple of years, I want to say, into identifying the core tenets of access and success, climate, and accountability. And what we do with that, what we did in our first accountability meeting in 2019, October and November, is we provided all of the unit leaders with their data. And then we asked them to talk about the state of equity, diversity, and inclusion in their units. What is the state of EDI? What has been successful, and what are you going to do to improve? Everybody had room for improvement. And Tammy, you remember this, right? You were on the advisory council. So all of the leaders had to come before the EDI advisory council, the chancellor, the executive vice chancellor, and talk about, all of the three things I just said. And then as a group, we asked some really hard questions. You'll remember the chancellor he had no chill that day. He was asking really hard questions. And they had to respond in the moment. We did rating, and then I had follow-up conversations with the unit leaders saying, here's what's gone really well for you, here are your opportunities for improvement. To answer your specific question about how we promote a healthier environment, a pro-Black environment, in this next iteration, which is currently targeted for March 2021, we will be asking the unit leaders to, in addition to looking at their units comprehensively, to talk about the experience, to center the Black community, to center the needs of the Black faculty, staff, and students. So what this last year has been super challenging for all of us, right? Moving to this remote environment during a pretty scary pandemic. And it's also been difficult for those of us who are Black, right? I really love your Black Lives Matter at UC San Diego background. Those of us who were both challenged with living through, figuring out, finding our way in the pandemic, and then also the racial uprising, at the same time, the movement for Black lives. And so it was really important for us to think about what can we do at UC San Diego to improve, right? My job is 24/7 to think about equity, diversity, and inclusion at UC San Diego. And this was an opportunity to engage in the national dialogue that was happening. How do we localize that and ask ourselves, what can we do better at UC San Diego? And so the chancellor had this idea of doing a 21-day challenge. And so through that, the 21-day anti-racism challenge focused on addressing anti-Blackness, right? So I digress. Let me get back to your specific question. In March 2021, we will repeat the EDI accountability meetings, and we will be asking people to talk specifically about what you are doing to improve the experience for our Black faculty, staff, and students. So when we talk about access and success, what is the experience like for Black faculty, staff, and students? When we talk about the climate, what is the experience like? What is the experience like on campus? What is it like in the classrooms? What is it like in the residence halls, right? So really thinking through all of the ways that people engage with our institution, and then really thinking specifically about one population in particular. And at some point later, we will repeat that and think about what is the Latinx experience? What is the Native American experience? In 2021, we will be talking about the Black experience, and it is really important that we take the time to focus on one population at a time in this way, right? So it's not to say we don't think of the whole breadth of equity, diversity, and inclusion, but if we don't pause to do this, we miss the specificity of this population's needs, right? And it's also important that when we talk about the Black experience, that we are Black and, right? We are Black and queer, we are Black and people with disabilities, right? So there is a lot for us to consider. Did I answer your question?
Yes, I believe so. Because really there's what I'm hearing is there's tools and there's accountability set up to address some of the needs. How is EDI going to assist like the individuals who may not be having a positive experience? So we have the departments and the units that are learning how to address the needs of Black people. And then we have those Black people that are in need of support.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, so one of the good things about leading these kinds of change initiatives is that we create openings to hear more about what's going well and what's not going well, right? So I welcome individuals who then come forward to say, this is your espoused belief, this is what you say you're doing, this is my lived experience, right? So it gives us the opportunity to address that and to close that gap. When we hear about an individual not having a good experience, it really depends on what the situation is, what the circumstance is. We have processes and ways to support individuals with whatever challenges they are having. So if it is someone feels they are being discriminated against, then we have our colleagues in OPHD, the Office for the Prevention of Harassment and Discrimination. We feel like there is someone who feels like they are not getting promotional opportunities, right? That's an opportunity for us to talk to supervisors about succession planning, about creating opportunities, about looking at how we evaluate our employees. So there are always possibilities and processes that we can pursue. And first we have to know about it, right?
Absolutely.
So we welcome hearing from individuals who are not thriving, who feel like they are not thriving here, because that really is the kind of environment that we are striving for. People will often hear me say is that we welcome diversity here, and we want to create the kind of environment where everyone has the opportunity to thrive.
Awesome. And I think I'm going to read this next question, but I think you pretty much covered it. So we say earlier this year, your office created a strategic plan toolkit as a guide for units to integrate the strategic plan and core tenets of access and success, climate and accountability into their own strategic planning. What advice do you have for units currently engaged in this process and for how to create sustainable change for their division or unit?
Right. I did kind of
Did pretty much.
answer that, but let me elaborate just a little bit. So the change strategy we have in place is where it's both centralized and decentralized. So centrally, we have established the core tenets, and what we want each unit to do is to localize that, because how you activate this plan in engineering is going to be different than how you might activate it in student affairs. It will be different than how you would activate it in resource management and planning. So we want people to think about why equity, diversity, and inclusion is important in their own organizations, and to think about their own internal processes, how they can improve that. And my recommendation is that people form committees. Don't do this alone. Have people in the organization helping to build the plan, helping to execute the plan. That old adage that people support what they help to create is really important. You want to have buy-in, and this is in fact the way that change initiatives really stick, when they are not concentrated in one central place, but when they are planted in many different places throughout the organization.
Absolutely. And I know a lot of the departments are implementing these strategies. I know in advancement, we have a task force, and I serve on that one as well. Okay, so our next question. Some staff, including those who do not work in EDI space often, may not know how to get involved with EDI efforts. How can they help with EDI efforts and move these efforts forward?
Mm-hmm. Right. So back to what I just said, starting with your own organization. If there is not a diversity council or an EDI council in your own organization, start one. Start one today. We will help you figure out how to do that, how to have really good representation on the committee, and there are things you can volunteer for, right? So for staff, they can volunteer for staff association, right? For the chancellor has a committee on the advisory committee on the status of women, and an advisory committee on gender issues and sexual orientation. So there are opportunities for involvement and engagement, and I never turn away volunteers. We have so much work to do, and as many folks as we can have on board, we welcome it. One of the things we talked about was how to start a movement. And when we talk about equity, diversity, and inclusion on our campus, we really want people to think of it as a movement. How do we build champions? How do we continue to recruit and build our what we call our advocates and influencers? So that is a group that people can affiliate with as well. If you're interested in that, Diane Forbes-Berthoud, please give Diana an email about that.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of different ways that people can actually become and get involved in support of EDI efforts on our campus. And it's awesome to hear all of this. So some staff, including those, wait a minute, did I just ask that? No. Some staff, including those who do not work with the EDI space often, yeah, we did just do that one, right? Didn't we say that one?
You did, yep.
I thought so. Let me scroll. So we received several questions related to the 21-day anti-racism challenge. People want to know, how do we keep the momentum going after the 21-day challenge? And what can staff do in their areas to keep these conversations going in their units?
Mhm.
And part C, what's on the horizon in terms of campus-wide education? And it could be similar to the 21-day challenge, or what's next from coming from EDI?
Mhm. Yeah. So about that 21-day challenge, the chancellor had this idea that he wanted to do this. And I tried to talk to him about, Chancellor, when would be the best time to do this? Like this, it's the summer now, right? And he was like, now. And I said, but it's summer, and is there not like we would have time to plan? He was like, now. And so I asked him, why does it have to be done right now? We could really use a little bit of time to plan. And he wanted to take advantage of the moment and to create, not create, but to take advantage of the urgency, right? There is an urgent need to address this, and why wait? It didn't take long for him to convince me that it was the right thing to do. Whatever we had on our portfolio at the time, we needed to pause and prioritize this. And so I'm grateful that he insisted we do this now. It was not ideal for the calendar in terms of our students were remote and that sort of thing, but it was ideal for a million other reasons, right? So we really just had a few weeks to pull that together, and I commend my team on doing an extraordinary job in a very short period of time. And I say this with not joking at all. You asked what's next. I say start over again. Start that 21-day challenge over again, because there is a lot of material there to absorb, a lot of lessons to learn. And we assembled a fantastic group of discussants to talk about what they took away from the learnings. And it was simply their own reflections. But I encourage people to start over, have your
Yes.
own reflections. And one of the things we're going to do is take away the dates on the website. So we had it guided by weeks.
Mhm.
We're going to take away the weeks so that units can have their own guided education and move through that material. Okay, so that's
Yes.
one thing. Start over. And what is on the horizon is we had a number of people, white allies, saying, what can I do? I realize I really need to be part of the solution. And so we have a couple of things. One for faculty, it's the Coalition of Aspiring Male Allies. You'll be hearing more about that from my Faculty Diversity and Inclusion unit. And then we are in the process of working on a white accountability group. We're going to be inviting in a keynote speaker and really helping people understand, what does it mean to be a white advocate, a white ally in this work. And then we're going to have some conversations and spaces for Black healing and Black resilience.
Yes.
And shout out for your bringing in Dr. Starla Lewis with the beautiful title, Born Free.
Yes.
That was incredible. And so thank you for your leadership in that initiative. We'll be doing something similar, and we'll be bringing in Reverend Dr. Jamie Washington.
Awesome. And thank you for that. There's so much work that needs to be done. And I think you've covered everything. And, with the Black healing, the advocates, the allies, the supporters, it takes all of us coming together in order to truly dismantle racism and systemic racism. With that question, I want to ask you this. So the Black affinity groups like BSU and the UC Black affinity group leaders have issued demands in response to the anti-Blackness and social inequities facing the nation, our local community, and UC San Diego, all of the UCs. Can you share what is being done to address the demands?
Sure, thank you for that question. So yes, we have received a number of demands, and as I said early on, equity, diversity, and inclusion at UCSD is my job 24/7, right? And I still welcome individuals saying what we can and should be doing better. In this work, we need to remain open, we need to remain flexible, and we always need to continue to listen to our constituents. And I think it is important that I model this, and that I am encouraging my colleagues to trust Black people, to trust us when we say, here's our experience, to trust us when we say, here's something that we need. So listening to what folks are saying we need to do better, I welcome that. Where we are in the process is having regular meetings with our Black constituents. I think you might have been involved, Tammy, in one of the meetings we had with the Chancellor and the Executive Vice Chancellor. So we're continuing to have those conversations in groups of leaders, groups of like other affinity groups, really trying to work our way through so that we are listening broadly, deeply, and consistently. And we are working with the Black Student Union right now, having regularly scheduled meetings and allowing them to lead, right? Allowing them to tell us what they want to talk about in the next meeting, who they'd like to hear from, and really responding to their demands. There are some things that are not within UC San Diego's control, and I always talk up to our scholars, talk up to our students. They can handle, this is not something that is within our control, and here are the things we can control, and here's how we are approaching that. So we have a group of people who represent all areas of campus, faculty, staff, and students, and where there are faculty issues involved, curricular issues involved, we are engaging our faculty senate colleagues. Where there are staff issues involved, we are involving our chief human resources officer, and so forth. Where campus police are involved, we are inviting in Vice Chancellor Matthews as well as Chief Rose to talk about that area and really respond to the needs. So I'm glad you asked that question, because often people outside of those of us who are meeting don't believe that any progress is being made. But I'm grateful that you asked, so I can share that publicly. And I encourage people to talk to students in our Black Student Union as well. They will confirm what I'm sharing, that we are having ongoing, mutually respectful dialogue about ways to improve.
Yeah, that's awesome, because we know we're not going to fix all of this, and we're not going to be able to address everything in one meeting, in one session, even 2 or 3 sessions. So it's great that you're going to have ongoing and consistent conversations. I cannot believe that our time is almost up. It just went by so fast. So I'm going to ask you our final question. And then for those of you who submitted questions and we did not get to them all, please know that we will try to answer those and get those responses out to you. But my final question for you right now, Becky, is we're getting, before we, oh my goodness, they have this little script here. So really what I'm gonna just ask you is, are there any final thoughts that you would like to share with us?
Sure. There's a question that I think was submitted that you didn't get to. So let me just lightly touch upon my area of scholarship also is about the ways in which service employees help to make higher education possible. right? This is
Yes.
literally our custodial workers, our groundskeepers and so forth on campus. And I want our service employees to know that I value you, I see you. And also I want to say thank you for helping with keeping our campus going. Many of us have had the I will say privilege to some extent. It's also a challenge, but of being able to work from home. There are some of our colleagues who have never left campus, and they have been there helping to make it safe for our students, faculty, and staff who are on campus. So thank you. I see you. I value you. And as to the final closing thought, I want to say it really is a privilege to lead in this area. And I lead, right? So
Yes,
what
you
I
do.
want to leave people with is that equity, diversity, and inclusion at UC San Diego is a shared responsibility. I am privileged to lead the effort, but I need everyone to understand that they have a part in creating the campus that we all deserve. And also, I want to encourage people to never give up on each other and believe in the possibility of change, that together we can create a better world and a better UC San Diego.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I just want to just tag on and just throw out another shout out to all of our volunteers, all of the staff affiliate groups, staff association, everything that we are doing and coming together, in this effort. It's all necessary and needed. But unfortunately, that's all the time we have this morning. Becky, I want to thank you for
Thank
talking
you.
with us today. It was great to learn more about you and everything that you're doing, both for and with UCSD. Our cabinet conversation is coming up, the next one, October 27th, which is a Tuesday, and it is going to be with Executive Vice Chancellor Elizabeth Simmons. We hope that you guys can join us on the 27th. Thank you for participating today, and thank you for spending your time with us. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Tammy.
Absolutely. Thanks, Becky.